Greek mythology is a treasure trove of stories, each brimming with intrigue, drama, and larger-than-life characters. From the towering heights of Mount Olympus to the darkest depths of the underworld, the gods ruled with power and passion, their actions leaving lasting impressions on the mortal world. Among these deities is Hades, the enigmatic ruler of the underworld. While many feared him as the god of the dead, Hades was not the embodiment of evil as some might assume. Hades rarely left his dark realm, but one story pulls him into the mortal world and entwines his fate with Persephone's. Now, Persephone was the beloved daughter of Demeter, the goddess of the harvest and fertility. She was a figure of light and vitality, her presence breathing life into the world. Wherever Persephone walked, wildflowers would spring up in her wake, their colors painting the meadows like a living masterpiece. She moved with a grace that seemed to command the very earth to flourish. Her laughter filled the air, mingling with the songs of birds and the gentle rustle of leaves in the breeze. Persephone was more than just a daughter to Demeter. She was a symbol of renewal, of the hope that comes with every spring. Each year, as Persephone wandered through the fields, gathering blooms and weaving garlands, she became the heart of the season. To the mortals who depended on Demeter's bounty, Persephone was a cherished symbol of abundance and prosperity. But in the midst of this harmony, beneath the surface of the earth, a shadow stirred. The world of light and growth that Persephone knew was about to be disrupted, forever changing her place in the eternal cycle. Deep beneath the earth, in the shadowy realm of the underworld, Hades ruled with quiet authority. As the god of the dead, his domain was one of silence and solitude, a place untouched by the vibrancy of the living world. Yet Hades himself was no mere figure of dread. He was enigmatic and powerful, his presence commanding respect even among the gods. But in his vast and lonely kingdom, Hades yearned for companionship. The halls of the underworld, though majestic, echoed with emptiness. It was then that his gaze turned upward to the world of light and life. Among the mortals and gods, one figure caught his eye, Persephone. She was radiant and full of life, her presence seeming to defy the gloom that enveloped his domain. To Hades, she was not just beautiful, she was irresistible, a force of nature that he believed could bring warmth and vitality to his cold, eternal world. The desire to make Persephone his queen grew stronger with each passing day. Yet Hades knew that the goddess Demeter, Persephone's mother, would never willingly allow her daughter to descend into the underworld. Still, the thought of sharing his kingdom with Persephone consumed him. He longed to see her grace the shadowy halls of his realm, to have her light pierce through the darkness. Hades, ever determined and calculating, made his decision. He would take Persephone for himself. The plan formed in his mind, a swift and deliberate act that would alter the fate of gods and mortals alike. With the resolve of one who rarely wavered, Hades prepared to bring Persephone into his world, setting in motion a series of events that would echo through the ages. On a serene day, Persephone wandered through a lush meadow, her hands weaving garlands from the wildflowers that blossomed in her wake. The sun bathed the earth in golden light, and the air was filled with the sweet scent of blooming flowers. She was unaware that her every move was being watched from the shadows beneath the earth. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet began to tremble. The peaceful meadow was split by a thunderous crack as the earth itself opened wide. From the dark chasm emerged Hades, his chariot drawn by black, fiery-eyed steeds. The sky seemed to darken, and the vibrant colors of the meadow faded as his presence cast an ominous shadow over the scene. Before Persephone could react, Hades swept her up into his arms, his grip firm and unyielding. Her cries echoed across the land, her voice calling out for her mother, for help, for freedom. But the meadow stood empty, save for the lingering garlands she had left behind. The chariot plunged back into the depths of the earth, the gap in the ground sealing behind them as though it had never been. The world above was left silent, the only trace of the violent act, a sense of sudden, inexplicable loss. Hades carried Persephone to his shadowy kingdom, the Underworld, a place far removed from the light and life she had always known. The vibrant goddess of spring had been stolen away, leaving the earth above to mourn her absence and setting in motion the sorrow and fury of a grieving mother. When Persephone's cries faded into the silence of the underworld, Demeter's heart was pierced with an overwhelming sense of loss. She searched the meadows where her daughter once roamed, calling her name, her voice echoing through the hills and valleys. But there was no answer, only the stillness of an earth that seemed to hold its breath in grief. As days turned to weeks, Demeter's sorrow deepened. She scoured the world in desperation, her footsteps taking her from the highest mountains to the farthest seas. But no matter where she went, Persephone was nowhere to be found. Her despair turned to anger, her cries to the heavens demanding answers. The once loving goddess of the harvest became consumed by her anguish, and her pain began to manifest in the world around her. Fields that were once lush and abundant withered under Demeter's neglect. Crops failed, rivers dried up, and trees stood barren. The warmth of the sun seemed muted, as though it, too, mourned the loss of Persephone. The earth itself seemed to grieve alongside Demeter, each blade of grass and wilting flower a reflection of her heartache. Demeter withdrew from the gods, retreating to a place of solitude, unwilling to let go of her mourning. Her sorrow was unrelenting, and her anger burned against those who allowed her daughter to be taken. As the world fell into chaos, even the gods grew restless, for they knew that without Demeter's blessings, the mortal world would perish. The seasons stood still, caught in an endless winter of grief. But in the underworld, far from Demeter's cries, Persephone remained, her fate entwined with the shadows of her captor's realm. Demeter's grief gave way to determination as she vowed to find Persephone, no matter how far or how long she had to search. She roamed the earth, disguised as a mortal, asking anyone she encountered if they had seen her daughter. From shepherds tending their flocks to travelers on distant roads, she sought answers, but no one could tell her what had become of Persephone. As her search continued, her absence from her divine duties caused the earth to fall further into despair. The fields remained barren, and the people, once thriving under her care, began to starve. Villages that once bustled with life grew quiet, and the cries of hungry children echoed through the land. Mortals pleaded to the gods for help, but none dared to interfere in Demeter's sorrow. In her relentless quest, Demeter reached the sun god Helios, whose all-seeing eyes had witnessed the abduction. Helios hesitated, knowing the wrath of both Hades and Demeter could be devastating. But seeing her desperation, he revealed what he had seen, the chariot of Hades, rising from the depths and carrying Persephone away into the underworld. Demeter's sorrow turned to fury. She now knew where her daughter had been taken, but she also understood the implications of challenging Hades, the ruler of the dead. Still, she was unyielding. She abandoned the heavens entirely, wandering the earth in mourning and refusing to let anything grow. Her actions brought the mortal world to the brink of ruin, and soon the gods themselves could no longer ignore her anguish. Zeus, ruler of Olympus, looked upon the suffering of both mortals and gods. Knowing the balance of the world was at stake, he decided it was time to intervene. But Demeter, consumed by her grief and anger, would not be appeased by words. Only one thing could restore the world to order: Persephone's return. And so, Zeus sent his messenger to the underworld, seeking to broker a deal that would determine the fate of both the earth and the goddess who mourned its loss. The suffering of the mortal world grew too great for even the gods to ignore. Zeus, king of the gods, knew that the balance of life and death was at risk if Demeter's grief continued to devastate the earth. He called for Hermes, the swift and cunning messenger of the gods, and commanded him to travel to the underworld. Hermes was to deliver a decree to Hades and negotiate Persephone's release. In the shadowy depths of the underworld, Hermes arrived at Hades' grand hall. The god of the underworld sat upon his throne, Persephone beside him, her radiance dimmed by the somber gloom of his realm. Hermes relayed Zeus's message, explaining the dire state of the mortal world and the need for Persephone's return to her mother. Hades listened, his expression unreadable. Hades, though firm in his claim over Persephone, was not without reason. He had grown to care deeply for her and wished for her to remain as his queen. However, even he could not deny the consequences of Demeter's wrath. A compromise was proposed, one that would satisfy both Hades and Demeter, though it would forever bind Persephone to two worlds. Without knowledge of Persephone, Hades had given her a pomegranate before Hermes' arrival. When she ate a few seeds of the fruit, a binding law of the underworld was invoked. She would be tied to the realm of the dead forever. But Zeus and Hermes, wise in their judgment, decreed that Persephone's time would be divided. For part of the year, she would dwell in the underworld as Hades' queen, honoring the bond forged by the pomegranate. For the rest of the year, she would return to the surface, bringing life and renewal to the earth alongside her mother. Hades accepted the terms, knowing it was the only way to maintain peace. Persephone, torn between the two worlds, agreed to the arrangement, though her heart ached for her mother and the life she had known. When Persephone ascended from the underworld, the earth rejoiced. Flowers bloomed, crops sprang to life, and Demeter's joy brought warmth and vitality back to the world. But each year, when Persephone returned to the underworld, the earth would once again fall into a quiet, somber winter as Demeter mourned her absence. Thus, the seasons were born, a cycle of light and shadow, life and stillness, forever tied to the journey of Persephone between two realms. When Persephone emerged from the underworld for the first time, the earth itself seemed to exhale in relief. Demeter rushed to her daughter's side, embracing her with a joy so profound that the world responded in kind. Flowers burst into bloom, rivers flowed freely once more, and the warmth of the sun returned to the fields. Mortals, who had suffered through famine and despair, celebrated the goddess's return with offerings and prayers of gratitude. But even in the midst of this happiness, a shadow lingered. Persephone shared with her mother the terms of her arrangement. The pomegranate seeds she had eaten bound her to the underworld for part of the year. Though reunited for now, there would come a time when Persephone would have to descend again, leaving the earth and her mother behind. As the seasons passed, the cycle began. When Persephone returned to the underworld, Demeter's sorrow caused the earth to wither once more. Trees shed their leaves, the air grew cold, and the land fell into the quiet stillness of winter. Yet when Persephone ascended again in the spring, Demeter's joy brought the earth back to life. This cycle became a rhythm of existence, an eternal balance between life and rest, growth and stillness. It was a reminder of Persephone's journey between the realms of the living and the dead, and of the unbreakable bond between mother and daughter. The story of Persephone and her journey remains etched into the turning of the seasons, a tale of light and shadow that shapes the world to this day. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to Mythos and Mankind for more captivating stories of mythology and history.